All right, guys, welcome back to the Lake Norman Business Podcast, Season 3. My name is Danny Decker, joined by Ryan Weber, and today we have Jeff Wanner as our guest. Jeff is the founder, CEO of Pair PEO. So, Jeff, welcome, man.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. Love being here.
Yeah, awesome. Tell us a little bit about Pair PEO.
Sure. So I used to work in the PEO sales industry, which is professional employer organization.
Okay, I was going to ask. I was like, dumb question over here.
No,
PEO, what's that?
It's not. And 80% of your audience is going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
What is a PEO?
I'm like a smart idiot over here, so just, dumb it down for me.
Sure. So a PEO essentially is a large employer that's going to employ a small company so that small companies have access to big company benefits and buying power, and also have the resources and shield to protect themselves from compliance and human capital related issues that could come up for a business.
Nice.
Very interesting.
So it basically solves the HR issues, right? Is
Right.
that the gist of it? Payroll, compliance, all of that stuff. It's a way for smaller businesses to get all their HR needs taken care of by a PEO organization.
Yeah. It's essentially turning a key and having all those things available, ready, and administered on a single sign-on human capital management platform so that as they grow and scale and bring on new employees, they all have a competitive package to offer against large employers in the organization.
Beautiful.
Love it. So you were saying you were initially doing sales in that space and...
Yeah. So I started doing sales in that space about 4.5 years ago now. And I realized about 2 years in what I eventually was going to be doing because I saw my clients just being very confused in the whole proposal process. It's a very ambiguous market that most people don't buy but once. And so they need a lot of help in that buy to make sure they're making the right decisions. And thus, I was doing a lot of pro bono referring my competitors because I didn't think my solution with Insperity at the time, who my employer was the best fit for the given client. And I realized now when I turned on the Pair PEO engine, I could do that for my clients every single time. Bring the right solution to the table, help them ask the right questions, call bullshit on the providers whenever you need to call bullshit, because sales reps will be sales reps and they'll do what they need to do to get a deal done.
So you switched from selling one company's solution into now a broker role where you help your clients evaluate all of the different options and then make the best choice. Is that how it works?
Yep. So basically my role is now gotten on their side of the table. I bring the right providers to the table, negotiate down price points and help them pick the right solution and set the right expectations so that they lead into a successful relationship with that PEO.
Love it. So what's a good fit for you? Like what size company, what type of industry makes sense for the PEO model?
So it's interesting because of how competitive the natural job force has gotten right now with the scarcity of talent, where more industries that were never good PEO fits are becoming good PEO fits. I think it always is predicated on the need to offer benefits to your employees. So generally speaking, historically, the PEO solution is great for anything that requires a post-high school degree, certification, anything that leads to making a scarcer and scarcer talent pool where turnover hurts more. Those are the industries that they want to be competitive. They want a solution that's going to represent the quality of the people that they're employing. And so as it relates to size, a lot of my engagements happen with a 5-person company that wants to offer these healthcare things for the first time. They're trying to make that first key hire that won't leave their big corporate job for the startup without having some securities and benefits in place that they had previously. And that becomes the catalyst for these startups to plug that in and help them grow to, as big of a company as they want to inside that PEO. But I do have clients into the hundreds. Those are not necessarily the ones that I'm chasing after, but I do think that those, they have a lot more expenses on the ledger as it relates to payroll and benefits that I'm auditing and helping them decide if there's a better solution out there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't realize that a business as small as maybe 5 employees could be a good fit for PEO.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
So I'm getting ready to hire my first employee right now, and I'm going to try to administer a PEO as part of my own company, obviously, because I don't want to deal with all of the details and nuances and minutia that goes along with HR and employing people and or benefits and payroll. And I would rather just turn a key and be able to do that as I continue to scale into new markets.
That's great. I mean, it's something that you need that you never want to do. So
I tell people all the time.
It's great to give it to somebody.
I tell people all the time, I'm not in the want to have business. I'm in the need to have business. And so the things that I do are not things that people generally proactively research and do.
It's like, man,
themselves.
I can't wait to go look for this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they'll put themselves to sleep if they do it. And so they bring in myself to help alleviate their need to get into the weeds and let me get in there for them.
No, I remember building my last business, Spotlight Branding, and one of the most challenging parts of that for me was when we started hiring people, because for me it was scary. The amount of like, well, I don't want to screw something up and like, not withhold enough payroll taxes and then the IRS comes after me, or I don't want to there's just so many like ways that you can screw up the HR process.
Oh, absolutely.
That
He's like, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I see it. Don't worry.
Well, it's funny because I was just in a Vistage group last month, and we were talking about this and how anxious I was to make the leap from W-2 to self-employed earlier here in 2019. And I'm feeling the same type of anxiety and angst about making that first hire, because all of the mess that I make right now is self-induced, and I know how to clean it up, and I know where the resolution is. I know the thought behind why I'm doing things. And so when I make that first hire, I'm going to really be sticking my neck out there to what kind of frustrations is that hire going to bring me, and where's the ROI going to be, and how can I make them effective in the business?
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So Jeff, season 3 of this podcast, so our audience are small business owners, entrepreneurs, and season 3, we're focusing in on like one specific superpower that we think our guests have. And just to try to give our audience just something real practical that they can use to make their like entrepreneurial life better. And I've always been really, really impressed with the way you approach networking. You're one of the most connected people I know. You just have a really great approach to it. So we brought you on here to hopefully talk about networking. So
Sure.
let's go there. When just talk about that. Sure. How do you approach networking?
So I think that my networking philosophy has been predicated on my history in PEO sales and being in the need to have business, not the want to have business. I'm never top of mind, and so I always took networking as an opportunity to create value that had nothing to do with my business and had nothing to do with my wallet. But if I could understand what somebody was looking, how they make money, what they do, who they partner with, and then align that with my network, take an inventory of what my network looks like, and make those connections where they're appropriate, I'm going to create value without inserting time and effort and energy into that value. All I'm doing is being intentional about knowing what they're looking for and connecting them to people that match that bill. Now, I came down here from Ohio 6 years ago, started in the networking community about 4.5 years ago, had nothing to offer at the beginning. And I was
other than my charm and good looks.
Yeah. I was a 25-year-old kid that really was just trying to learn, be a sponge, understand what people were doing, and seek a lot of mentorship, honestly, from some of the thought leaders across the technology and business development community. And eventually that evolved because you start accumulating social capital and you start accumulating or hearing trends and patterns and things that you're hearing consistently that you can create avenues for solving problems that really aren't yours, but those go a long way. And for me, go ahead.
Let me just put that in like my perspective. So I've met with you, we've hung out a lot, and there'll be times we'll be getting coffee or lunch or something, and I'll share something that I'm struggling with. Could be, anything around business or whatever. And like, you'll almost always be like, wow, I know like 4 people you need to talk to. It's not just like, oh, hey, there's this guy, let me try to remember his name. You're like, dude, I know like 3 people, all of whom could like help with this.
Right.
So like, what I want to know is, how do you keep it all straight? Like, how do you have like a Rolodex? Like, what do you do?
So this is the problem I have for creating or replicating myself in the future, is that believe it or not, I use no CRMs. I use nothing outside of what inspires me to think of somebody to make an introduction. So there's no way I can start. I'm sorry, I can't give you some secret formula.
But also, this is really interesting, because you're saying that you use nothing. You do a ton of networking. So if somebody added value to your life and made an impression on you, you're going to remember who they are. So that's a very important networking thing. When you meet somebody, they need to add value to you to make themselves memorable. So when someone has an issue like Danny, you can recommend.
Correct.
So that's super powerful for people that are thinking about, well, what do I even do with networking? Be valuable.
And Yeah, that's spot on. And I think that what you see in a lot of business development people where they go wrong is that they have a one-track mind and they know what they need to do to hit their sales goal. But a lot of that has nothing to do with the value that they're creating in the networking community. And so it just goes back to my philosophy around if I can create by giving and create value, whether it's a revenue or it's a new employee or it's a solution to a problem that one of my conversations is having, that is instantly going to give them that psychological shift to feel like they want to give something back. And so I end up getting introductions all over the place from all kinds of people that, I probably have given many more introductions to than they're giving me, but they
what's that reciprocity? I feel like I've got to give this guy something. He's giving me 7 leads, right. And like I've got to find somebody for him.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like everybody feels that way towards me whenever I'm interacting with them in a networking capacity. But at the end of the day, like I'm not expecting anything to happen. Yeah. I'm a 30-year-old business owner. I have a very long view of all this. If I get an ROI on a conversation that I have today that I make 5 introductions for, like I don't need an ROI in 15 months. I need an ROI in 15 years. And really, I don't need an ROI then either. It's just about doing the right thing and creating a better entrepreneurial community here in Charlotte.
So how do you go about finding people to network with or finding network groups? It's not like something you're just like walking down the street and like, hey, that guy looks cool. Let me go network with him. You've got some sort of way to find them.
Sure. Lots of trial and error initially. So I had started up the Charlotte Business Group, the first iteration of it, which has done a great job taking off here in its second generation of board group members. But that's more of a catch-all networking, great for the B2C community, not great for the B2B community. So I would go to these events the goal was always to meet 1 or 2 people that I could sit down, have a one-on-one with, understand what kind of challenges they're facing, have a candid conversation, because in a networking mass community, you're going to get a lot of posturing and you're going to get a lot of superficial conversations that you can't wait to end. And so I got away from that as soon as I could. And now my network, I'd say I do the only things that are on my calendar are generally put there by outside resources. And so my networking has become more spearfishing. And sometimes it's as simple as somebody asking me, hey, this kid's 24 years old. He doesn't know anybody here. I think you could really help connect him into the right circles. And I know what people did for me at 24 and 5 years old, and I want to be able to give that back. And I get just as much intrinsic motivation out of watching them succeed as I do watching my business succeed.
I love that, man. So how much time do you spend networking in a given week?
Do you want me to pull out my calendar?
No, but
no.
It's got to be a pretty significant amount.
Yeah, I'd say I run somewhere between 12 and 15 face-to-face meetings per week. And as I'm going to each of those meetings, I'm calling, checking in on old relationships. I'm texting people. Most of my day is meant around keeping consistent communications with people that I think are bringing value to my network that I want to continue to insert into conversations and continue to materialize a relationship with. So it is almost 100% of my week. And what I really enjoy doing, it's extremely inefficient because I'm in the car all the time and I do a lot of windshield time, but it's so rewarding to watch those relationships come to fruition.
It sounds a lot like, who's the guy that you talked about the podcast, Lewis Howes.
Yes.
It's kind of how he got started. He's got this huge podcast, huge following, but he became known as the networker because he was trying to get into, what was it, athletic, front office stuff. And so just started networking, just built this huge networking thing, and then, grew it on LinkedIn and then in person. And it's just well, who's Lewis Howes? Well, he just knows people. That's what it is. And it sounds like you just know people.
It got there a lot quicker than I ever envisioned it getting there. But again, I think that, having that intention to understanding where people's challenges are and understanding how they make money and being able to, be in a lot of small business rooms and just there's always opportunities if you're listening for the right things.
Do you find yourself niching your network? Do you try and find specific niches to stay in, or do you just kind of say people in business?
Yeah, I'd say that I don't specifically intentionally niche myself at all. I find myself in the marketing value chain conversations quite a bit just because they're fun. Those are the want-to-haves. Yeah. And those are the things I get excited about.
It's our business. We're people that they want to do stuff, but they just don't know what to do.
Right. And so that was always an area that my degree is in a marketing degree. And so I have a lot of just energy for that community as a whole, but I don't think I specifically niche myself there. I think that just whenever you meet people in a certain industry, you tend to to get passed around to other conversations so that you can create similar values across the spectrum of marketing.
So Jeff, I want to maybe put you on the spot a little bit. So I know a lot of business owners who like they spend some time marketing because they are networking because they know they need to, right? They like check off the box. So they're like part of a BNI or something like that, like a formal networking. But then I'll have a conversation with them and they'll be like, yeah, but you know, I put time into it and I don't really feel like I'm getting anything out of it. Like, how would you counsel maybe somebody who's not as experienced at networking? Like, how do you go about it in a way? How do you get started? How do you make sure you get an ROI on it?
So to start at the front of your question, BNI, I think, is a great tool for B2C professionals, a lot like general large networking socials and stuff like that. But I think that my BNI strategy was always to go to be a guest, meet the two people that I want to have a one-on-one with, because there's only a handful of B2B professionals and advisors inside those BNI groups typically. But I've tried to take that away because the BNI philosophy creates more of a you have to do things. And I don't want to have to do anything. I want to do things. And so I've shifted BNI over to like a mastermind group that I do with 7 other entrepreneurs that are doing something complementary to what I'm doing. Although if they were doing something competitive, it would be just as worthwhile for me. Because then you're in groups with people that you want to be in groups with. You're understanding their family dynamics. You're humanizing the business relationship, which I think is so crucial and critical for people wanting to endorse you and support your success.
Dude, I think that's such an important point. I have nothing against BNI. Like I used BNI to build one of my first businesses, but there is something different about like in the BNI world or any group like BNI. It's like you're giving referrals because you have to, like you said, like you have to, but it's way different when you have a bunch of relationships with people that you genuinely like and you're giving them referrals because you really want to,
right?
Not because you have to meet your quota so you don't get kicked out of the group. I think that's such an important point.
Yeah, it is. But again, like if you don't have a network to lean on and you're trying to build that out, that's the first step. You know, you go and acquire some good allies and then you can create something that's less formal and more personal, and it will be much more, impactful to everybody's businesses.
So if someone was trying to go and if they have a networking event coming up, what is the one thing that you can say you've got to be good at this to be successful in your next networking event?
You just got to be okay starting a conversation.
So what would you do?
Just go say hello to somebody. I mean, you would be amazed at how that first conversation, which is uncomfortable for everybody. Everyone's there. They want to, lean on the people that they have some familiar, experiences with and have a comfort with. But if you can go up and talk to any random person and that conversation ends up becoming so contagious for the people around you, because most people are just waiting for conversations to happen.
I always tell people, like, get the other person to talk about themselves.
Right.
It's the one thing they know, and they love to talk about it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's all super, templated conversations. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? Trying to understand a little bit more about how you can make that relationship kick. But I'd say that, it's not about the volume of conversations you're having at these things. It's about the quality of these conversations. That I can go to a networking event. I'll be there less than an hour, almost 100% of the time. I don't want to be out drinking and carrying on during the week. My wife has to deal with enough of that on the weekends when my Buckeyes and Browns are disappointing me. But
only one of them's disappointing right now.
That's true. That's true. And so, I'd say, you go out and you have a good conversation and ultimately it's not about just the surface level stuff. It's asking questions about, what drives them, where they're at in their life. Do they have, do they have a spouse? Do they have kids? Like there is a lot of that in Charlotte that didn't exist in Ohio. Quite frankly, it was a lot more closed off network. And down here, I do think there's a lot of impact to the humanizing nature of networking, understanding where people are at in their life and how you can help them.
That's so good. So what's one mistake that you see people make when they're networking? You have a captive audience here. Let's set the record straight.
The inverse of that is the epitome of what gives networking a bad name is the person that's passing out business cards like a poker dealer, and you're like, they think that this one business card and this impression, and they hand it to you, shake your hand, and walk away. Like, what the hell do you think that that's doing outside of damaging your brand? You're
creating more trash.
Right.
They're just going to throw it away if you didn't put an impact on them.
Right, exactly. And so I think that the networking community could use a lot less of that. Here's
something that I've heard you say. You've never said the word, but like my philosophy is the same thing. Help first. walk up to somebody and say, how can I help you kind of thing?
Right.
And have that mindset rather than say, how can I take from you?
Right.
I want to give to you.
Right.
And eventually it's going to come around. Like
Right.
karma happens, bad or good. And,
Right.
if you come in and say, I want to help, how can I do that? Sounds like you're going to get some good benefit in the long run.
Yeah, it's contagious both sides.
Right.
The taking mentality is contagious and the giving mentality is contagious. And so I've chosen, obviously a pretty intentional path towards giving, and it's bode well. And I think it's built a great personal brand for myself. And now my business has been able to use that as a catalyst for success here in the first year. And hopefully that continues on into the future.
Love it. So Jeff, how can people learn more about the business? Do you have a website? Are you on Facebook, LinkedIn?
Yeah, so pairpeo.com, which is PAIRPEO.com. It's the website is what I'm using right now. I'm working on a newsletter distribution. I have a blog on there that I distribute through social channels as well. And hopefully more into the future as me and you have more conversations about execution of the marketing plan we put together.
Totally, 100%. Well, Jeff, it was great to have you on here. I really think that the value you shared here can make a big difference. Networking is a big deal. A lot of people don't know how to go about it. So thanks a lot for coming on here, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here, guys.
Thanks.